Well, okay, folks, we're back, and let's talk a little bit more about some other topics. That other stuff is too depressing. But you know something? You got to think about it. It's important to know what your government's doing. They don't want you to know, but we are here to tell you. You got a credit card? Are you getting offers in the mail for free money? Just take our credit card. We'll give you a credit line of $5,000. We'll give you a credit line of 10,000. As much as I love it when they say we'll give you a credit limit as much as $15,000. As much as isn't what you're going to get. You got to call in, and then they have to look at your credit because they really haven't looked at it. They're just sending out a mailing. Basically, what they want is for everyone in the country to be a slave to money. Now, there are some people who have looked at this and realized that that's exactly what this amounts to. Don't pay your bills and see what happens. Don't pay that credit card bill. Oh, you got the... Now, there is one good reason to have a credit card, and I am in favor of this one reason. And let's go back a few years to when women used to use a scrub board to do the laundry at home. And then they came out with the washing machine and an electric dryer or a gas dryer. And wow, the time saving that took place when you got those two appliances, that was worth using a credit card to buy those appliances and then pay it off, because you got the extra benefit for a long term to make life a little better and maybe give you some free time to go and make a little extra money to help make those payments. But you didn't have to do that labor. It was different. For that reason, I could see having a credit card as long as you don't get in too deep. I can tell you there was a time in California, I got a letter from Bank of America. And they said, listen, you credit so good. We're giving you this credit card for $10,000. Don't even bother calling us. Just take it. And I spent it. And I will admit, it did make life a little tougher. Now I became a slave to that credit card. And all kinds of nice things can happen to you when you're using it. But when you have to pay it back, that's a different story. Now, do all lives matter? You bet. Do Black lives matter? Yeah. Well, how come nobody says that Chinese lives matter? Are they getting credit cards? They're working. Everybody wants to work. It gives you a feeling of accomplishment, of self-worth. When people just give you stuff, there's no value to what you got. So think about that. You see some horrible things go on when they show you videos on television about people being ejected from their homes, from the places that they're renting. So let's say you're renting a place and you have no money to make the payment. What happens? Well, these days you don't get evicted. The landlord has to make the payments on the properties he owns. And who's to say the landlord has that kind of money? But if you got to stay in that house, and I can remember in California, for 6 months, the lawyers would get involved and keep you in a place you never paid any money for 6 months before you actually had to leave the house. And those were peaceful demonstrations. They didn't burn the house down. But when you watch people get angry when they can't make the payments on the property that they're renting, the house or the apartment, many times they destroy things. They take things. It makes life very difficult for some people. And that, to my way of thinking, is not peaceful. So when you get that credit card in the mail, if it'll help you make the payment on your rental, fine. But just remember, once you use that money, there's an interest rate that you have to pay in order to pay it down. And you better be ready to go out there and work and get some money to do that, because it's not going to be fun. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I always enjoyed working. Even as a little kid, I always wanted to go work with my dad. Well, I can remember when my dad was building the house that we lived in Massac Beach, New York. And they had dug the foundation. They had poured the cement, and he was starting to put cement blocks up on the foundation once the foundation was cured. And oh God, I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, and I really wanted to work with Dad. And I said, Dad, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. Dad, please, please, please. And finally he relented. He said, okay, you want to help me? Go get the plane. So I ran into the shed, and I came back with my toy airplane. I didn't know what the hell he wanted. And he got all mad at me, and he said, that's not a plane. Oh, yes, it is. This is what I wanted, he said. It was a tool to shave the wood. Always wanted to work. My first job, delivering newspapers for Newsday. I was 12 years old. These days, you can't work at 12. But I got a job delivering newspapers at 12. And I delivered. Rain, sleet, snow, didn't matter. I was out there. There were times when there was so much snow packed into my wheels that I had to drag my bike home with the wheels stuck. But I always paid attention to it. Then I was 14, and my dad brought me in to work in his radio and TV store. And you know what? You should never do that to your kids until you tell them what the price of things are. I'll never forget being in the store during the summertime. We lived in a resort community. And this guy came in and wanted to buy lead-in wire for his antenna. And I told him, I said, I don't know how much to charge you because I don't know the price. And I was only 14. And he said, well, I need it. Whatever it is, you just tell me and I'll pay it. So I thought about it, and I said, well, I think 4 cents a foot sounds fair. He said, oh, my God. I said, well, I don't know what to charge you. He says, okay, it's okay, I'll pay it. When my dad came back, I told him what happened. And he said, oh, my God, you should have charged him a half a penny a foot. I hope he comes. Who was the guy? He wanted to know. He wanted to go give him his money. And the guy never came back. I can't blame him. But that was a lesson to me. I never should have I should have made the guy come back, but he was so insistent. And all during my life, I've always worked. I've never taken a nickel on public support. Never had unemployment. None of that. Always wound up having work. Because it made me feel good. I like working. I work for free. As long as I can eat, I'm a happy camper. I don't need to make $1 billion, although that's nice. And I just think when they talk about Black Lives Matter, I would like them to talk a little more about what they really mean about black. Do they want jobs? Okay. There's no reason they can't have jobs, but you have to have some skills in order to get a job. And it does make you feel worthwhile to have work that you're contributing, that you bring home, quote unquote, bring home the bacon. My son brought some bacon home today, by the way. He likes bacon. And everybody I always knew, everybody I hung around with, always liked work. I remember during the summertime, all my friends got a job at the local supermarket or the ice cream store. My first girlfriend, she had a job as a soda jerk at a place called the Cozy Corner. And I could go in there and I could get a double dose of chocolate malted because she was my girlfriend. But she liked working, and I liked the fact that she worked. I like chocolate malted. And even in the military, there was a fellow named Charlie D. Church. I'll never forget Charlie. We're out there working, we're doing some work on the engines on an RP-66. And I look over, and Charlie's sitting on the edge of the concrete, just sitting around, and I'm working. So I went over and I said, Charlie, what's the matter? He said, well, I'm done. I said, what do you mean you're done? There's still work to do. And he said, yeah, but I feel I've done my share. I'm just waiting for you to catch up. And I asked him, well, Charlie, how did you determine that? He said, well, I just looked at what you're doing, what I'm doing. And I said, Charlie, don't you enjoy what you do? I said, if you don't enjoy doing this, you shouldn't be here. So come on back. We got to go back to work and finish this. And you know what? From that day forward, Charlie never took a break because he realized he really enjoyed the work we did. It was enjoyable. It was fun. And that's the story of life. And when people say Black Lives Matter, there's no doubt about it. But look at some of these people that they use as examples for Black Lives Matter. They were abusive. They were petty thieves. And they really didn't. I just look at it and I think to myself, yeah, their lives did matter, but so did their attitude about their life and their benefit to society. I just can't see that. I just see the whole country coming apart, and I'd be surprised if there isn't another raid on the Capitol someday, if they keep doing what they're doing. Because you can't beat up the way they beat up the conservatives in this country and expect them to sit still and watch it go away. You know, there was a time, there's an organization in Washington called HALT. It's like when you go to England, they don't have stop signs. They have HALT signs. Don't ask me why, but that's... So this organization called HALT and it still exists in Washington. If you look it up on the internet, you'll see it. And this organization used to study what the lawyers did. And in the 80s, I actually had a conversation with them a couple of years ago, and I asked them if they remembered, and the people working there had never been working for HALT at that time. But in the 80s, the National Association of Lawyers, whatever they're called, had a proposal in Congress where they argued that the average citizen should never be allowed to discuss the implication of a law, that you should always have to go to a lawyer to ask the question. You could not have an opinion. It had to come from a lawyer. And they were serious about this. And the folks at HALT, I actually sent them some money at the time, because to me, they were fighting that tooth and nail. Well, it never happened. But that just goes to show you how things tend to creep up on you. And today, there are organizations that HALT does not even look at anymore because we've come to accept them. They are organizations that government institutes, but they're not the government. They're private organizations given the power over your life. Well, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until they forgive my debt. And they will someday. One day, any debts that you have will be forgiven. It's called Jubilee. And if you've never heard of Jubilee, you should read about it. And I'm not a Bible thumper, but if you go to Leviticus 25, you can read about Jubilee. It has been in effect for a long, long time, before the Bible, or at least before the New Testament. And basically it said that every 50 years there would be a reset of your debt. And what that meant was the people who were the lower class, if you will, the ones who worked the fields, that lived in hovels, that were the poor, the working poor, the working middle class even. The kings and rulers owned all the land, so they would contract with the rulers to get a piece of land to farm. So you as the farmer could keep a portion of what you raised and the rest would go back to the landowner. But the problem was the cost of doing that farming got more expensive regularly. So the poor farmer was always in debt to the landlord. Until it got to the point where the poor farmer was so badly in debt that the economy started to suffer. Because economies require people to be able to spend. Every economy that I'm familiar with requires consumer confidence to spend. So the way they got around that, because let's use the word king. The king owned all the land. So all the debt was owed to the king. And when the king's advisors started to see that things were falling apart in the economy, the king could forgive the debt because it was all owed to him. And when he forgave the debt, the economy would pick back up. And we'd be back in business again. It was a do-over. Now you may think, well, that's kind of stupid, but don't kid yourself. This actually happened after World War II in Germany. They had a financial reset, very similar to Jubilee. And if you look around, you can probably find out about how that worked. All I can tell you is, let's keep going deeper and deeper into debt. Like I talked about at the beginning of the show. Because I can't wait to see that Jubilee coming. Now, I don't have any debt. I'm debt free. And I'm happy with that. But all of you out there with big debt, they're already talking about a Jubilee. They're not calling it a Jubilee, but they're talking about essentially a Jubilee for everyone who's got these big loans that they got to go to college. And they want to forgive that debt. This is a Democrat program. Want to forgive the debt with your money. Now, you didn't get to go to college. You don't get to get a better job because somebody else went to college. But yet they're asking you as the taxpayer to forgive that debt. To what benefit to you? Now, it's not all about Black Lives Mattering or all lives matter. That's not the issue here. The issue is your life matters. You as an individual, as a family man, as a single person, as a working person. That matters. And essentially, when the government tells you they want to forgive the debt of people that went to college and have 50, 100,000 in debt, 20,000 in debt, and God may never be able to pay it off, that's no different than those farmers I told you about during Jubilee with the king. We don't have a king in this country, but you know what we do have? We have political royalty. And that political royalty is thinking that they need to do something so they don't enslave the very people that have now gotten this great education. And we need to have more engineering and math and science and technology. That's where everything is going. Social services, you get a college degree in social services. Didn't used to be that way. We took care of each other when it was necessary. So debt forgiveness, I think, is coming. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but believe me, it's coming, because when we forgive debt, somebody still has to pay it off, because that money wasn't just given away. It was borrowed money that they got. The government borrowed the money and then gave it to somebody so they could go to college. And now they want college to be free. Well, there is no such thing as free. It's free to the person who's going to go to college, but it's not free to the person who has to pay for it, because somebody has to pay. Public schools are like that. You have to pay. But to me, the benefit of the public school is we get an educated citizenry that's supposed to be able to take care of themselves. And if they can't, guess who's responsible? You see it every day. As a matter of fact, you can look right close to home at Valley Electric. You had your friends and neighbors on the board of directors at Valley Electric taking money and borrowing money to the tune of 75% loan to value. In other words, the banks were entitled to collect 75% of what you paid to operate Valley Electric. And basically, they could foreclose on Valley Electric and force changes. And those very people that were on the board of directors put us in that position. They created a situation where they had to sell off one of their bigger investments, a $200 million power line, which really should have sold for more like $400 million because of the right-of-way and other things that went along with it. But they blew it. And those very people were recalled. There were recall petitions for every one of those people at Valley Electric that were on that board. And some of them just didn't run again, so 2 people got elected to their district. And one of them saw the handwriting on the wall when the petitions were being circulated. So Pete Gazzi resigned. And it's right there in the Valley Electric, June 2019, Ruralite magazine specifically states that he resigned because of that petition, because he didn't want to face a recall. And so they didn't have to recall him. But the petition was there, and it had the signatures. Now that guy wants to be on the Valley Electric board again. In your wildest dreams, that guy has a big pair of balls. He does not deserve to be anywhere near anything to do with money at Valley Electric, or anything at Valley Electric. And he should be outright rejected, not get one. He should only get one vote, his own. And then we have another candidate running for Valley Electric who was appointed when he resigned. Now, this particular candidate read the bylaws. Actually, I called her attention to the bylaws that said that if you don't get a majority of the vote, and it was in the bylaws, but there was no suggestion as to how to deal with that. But she went to Valley Electric and asked when they were going to have a runoff so somebody could win by majority. And the next thing you know, she got appointed. And I've never heard from her since. To me, she got appointed by the very people who were still on the board under recall. and now she wants to be a board member. She shed tears at one of the meetings I went to listen to what they were doing. She was shedding tears because she worked so hard. If you shed tears, what did you think? It's going to be a cakewalk with that kind of debt? And even today, we still have problems with the debt. And she was part of the board when they let Angela Evans go. After they told Angela that her job was not in jeopardy, she was one of them that let her go. And you want to have that person on the board? She has voted for changes in board policies that do not make it appear as though she thinks Valley Electric is owned by you and me. There's only one person that recognizes that fact and will represent you and me and every other owner as though we are the owners, which we are. By law, we are the owners. And that would be Bill Carnes. You've gotten your ballot in the mail, and there are 3 people on the ballot, but only one deserves to have a seat on the Valley Electric Board in District 1, and that's Bill Carnes. I don't know what other people are thinking, but there's only certain things that should be expected of a board of directors member. We pay an exorbitant salary for people to run Valley Electric. That could be a topic for another day, but we pay a pretty handsome salary. So why does a board member have to understand all of the inner workings of how electricity works? That's why we pay the experts. That's why we pay the very people that are the employees. It's their job, and it's up to the directors to direct them as to what we expect. So with that, I'm going to urge everyone out there, vote for Bill Carnes, send your ballot in early, and ignore the other 2 people because they are not working your best interest. Well, it's been kind of fun. I've kind of run through a whole bunch of things here, but I hope they all tie together. And with that, I want to thank those of you that are listening. I think the audio is much improved, and so I'm told. We shall see. And with that, I am out of here.